Hey, welcome everyone. Hey, this is a podcast that explores various aspects of addiction, potentially focusing on personal stories of recovery, scientific perspectives, societal impacts, or related topics. This podcast often features discussions with experts, individuals in recovery, therapists, and advocates to offer insights and support to those affected by addiction or seeking more information about it. Welcome to another episode of The Other Side of Addiction. I'm your host, Al Richards, and today with our guest, Schon Nielsen, we're going to be talking about When Light Shatters. And it's a story about lessons learned and healing life through compassion. And I really do believe that we need some more compassion. We need to give out more compassion in the world the way that it is today. I think it will make a huge impact. So, Schon, welcome so much for being here with us today. Greatly appreciate it.
Thank you, Al. I appreciate you having me on. It's great to be here, and I'm happy to come on and talk about this. So.
Yeah. And you and I spoke, I don't know, about a month ago or so, and you had told me quite a while ago that you was writing a book
Yep,
and you shared just a little bit about it, and this book is done. And
it is done.
that's the reason for having you on the show,
Uh,
because I love to have this platform to help other individuals share a book or a podcast or whatever it is that they may do. But also the title that you have of that book, When Light Shatters, I mean, is
yeah,
huge because I think every single one of us out there in life, our light has shattered many
yeah.
times
Oh,
over.
yep, absolutely. Yeah. So this has been a long process for me. So I started this actually many years ago. Um, it's based around experiences that I had with my own grandma. She fell into some what they call elderly depression, right? And so she had moved into our basement when I was in high school. She had been in her own home for many, many years downtown. Came with us because Grandpa had passed away some years before that, and she was alone and having people breaking into her house, things like that. So it's like, hey, it's time to get Grandma in a safe place. So they moved her in with us, and I was a teenager trying to kind of forge in my own way and being a teenager and going to high school, and all of a sudden I'm sharing this living space with my grandma. And then not too long after she moved in, she started into these kind of periods of severe depression. And as a teenager, I was kind of handling it from the space of a teenager, right? From the mindset and mentality of a teenager, and didn't really know how to handle it and didn't know how to deal with it in a lot of cases. And some things that I did and some things that were said along the way were very regrettable in a lot of in some cases. And then when she passed away, a few years have gone by, and it the more I thought about it, and the more of those memories kind of hung around, I decided just to put a few words down as just it was kind of a cathartic thing at first, and I just started writing out some paragraphs and just was gonna maybe share a little bit with the family, and then it just kind of became this whole other thing, and it just continued to develop and grow over the years, and as a way for me to kind of process what happened, but also as more time went by, I thought, you know what, this happened to me. This happened to my family. This could happen. This is probably happening to who knows how many other families around the country, and it's going on in every city in America and around the world where people are struggling with these things. And maybe this can be something that I can use to maybe help somebody else, even if it's just one person that I can reach and say, hey, I went through this. These are some of the things that I did. These are some of the things that happened to us. Maybe you can do things a little bit differently. And so it's become this thing where it's like, I got to get this done because maybe I can help somebody else with it.
There we go. I was on mute. I love that you ended up looking at it that way because so many of us, things happen to us in life. I just had a show earlier where I had this beautiful lady on the show, and she's talking about the journey that she went through. And I went hiking with this gal during the time when she was going through all this crap in her life. And I
Mhm.
had no clue. And when I was going through the stuff that I went through with my ex during the depths of her addiction, I felt like I was the only one that was going through it. And
Yeah,
and and I think
yeah,
that's where we make a mistake, right? That
yeah, yeah,
and I did the same thing you did, Sean. I mean, I said some mean, some ignorant, nasty things to my ex. And it was me trying to force, get yourself together, right? Get out of this addiction, when all I was doing was just pouring more fuel on the fire, making it worse, making her feel, well, I was just throwing out more daggers, basically.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yep,
to be able to, that's what started this show, right?
right.
In the
Yeah, I
same way
remember you
your book
telling me.
started.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and that's kind of what happened with me. I was a kid, I was young, I didn't understand. So here's this woman who I had this very loving relationship with since being a child, and spend so much time at her home, and she was always very welcoming. And then the reason for that title, and I went through many titles over the years and kind of settled on this one, because she was one of those people who brought so much light wherever she went. She was such a positive, nurturing personality, um, and just welcomed everyone into her home, and holiday dinners, and just one of those very comforting kind of people. But then when she started having these bouts of depression, she completely shut off and completely became almost somebody I could hardly recognize. It, in the book, I describe a little bit of us kind of having this ghost in our home who wasn't a ghost. She was just this kind of this presence that I hardly recognized anymore. And there were bouts where things got really abrasive and I didn't know how to handle it. So it's like the light in her just kind of disappeared. It shattered, and it was really hard to deal with as a kid. Right? And that part of that processing is, um, you know, kind of coming to terms with some of those things where you kind of reach this acceptance that says, yeah, you were a kid and it's okay. You didn't know how to handle it. You didn't have the resources. You didn't have the mentality to handle it. It's like you did the best you could at the time, even though maybe it wasn't the best, and things were said. But it's kind of like it's time to get past that and accept the fact that you were dealing with it at the level of a teenager. Now you have this perspective as an adult, and it's a whole different thing. And you mentioned that aloneness. It's funny because when I released this and I put it out, I put it out there on Facebook, and most of my family didn't know I was doing this, other than my close family, my mom, my wife, and sisters, and But when I put it out there, I had family members coming to me and saying, "Oh, wow, I had no idea." And then some of the family that read it came back and said, "Oh, wow, I really had no idea this was going on. We were kind of on the outside, and some family living out of state, like, we had no idea this was going on with you and grandma." So, well, yeah, that's kind of the reason for this. It's the reason to get this out and say, it's okay. These are issues that need to be dealt with, and especially, this kind of we're in such a heightened time for mental health awareness right now. And I thought even more reason to kind of get it out there, because we're so focused on mental health right now, which is good. Um, and there's so many more resources out there for people. And but yeah, I definitely felt alone for a long time. And it's just been interesting to hear people come out and say, "Wow, we had no idea. I had no idea this was going on with you."
Yeah. Yeah, the same thing happened to me when I finally started opening up about the battle my ex-wife was going through.
Yeah.
And some good that comes out of this, and I'm sure you're starting to see this as well, is you start getting pulled aside by people and going, "Hey, can I chat with you in private for a minute?"
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden they start sharing, right? "Hey,
Right.
this is what happened," whether it's family members or someone you just talked about, said, "Hey, I've got this book," and they happen to read it. And it's, or just even like being on this podcast, right? People get to hear your voice and they go, "Oh my gosh, I know exactly where this guy's coming from.
Yeah.
It happened to me," whether it doesn't matter which end that they were on,
Right.
because it still happens to us.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And it's funny because I have an aunt who lives out in Arizona, and very close with my mom, and we talk occasionally, but it's not someone I've really had a lot of really in-depth conversation with over the years. It's just kind of not her style. Well, she read it and she called me one night, and I ended up having this hour-long conversation with her. about just kind of her perspective on all that, because she was living in Arizona and wasn't completely dialed into what was going on, and feels like there's some mistakes that she made, and so we're having this dialogue and these conversations I in a million years I never would have imagined having with her, and so it's a great thing, just to have that open up like that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I think that's something that's so great about what you were doing. Because I guarantee people are going to get this book and it's going to open their eyes. And I love what you said about through compassion,
Yeah.
because I think that's something that we have lost in society. It's still there. I'm not saying it's completely
Hmm.
gone. However, we've got to bring it back a thousandfold, because
Yeah.
we have definitely, we're so busy now, especially nowadays. We we are pushing people away because of their sexual belief, their political belief, their health belief, whatever it may
Yeah.
be,
Yeah.
right? And not even knowing or having the compassion to understand what this individual had gone through, because you don't know the reason.
Yeah.
We're so busy pointing those fingers, and it's a hard thing to switch, because I've been one of those people as well. I've shared that many times on the show about going downtown and mumbling under my breath about the unsheltered and the drug addicts and alcoholics down
Right.
there. Then you get in in the recovery community, and you do a podcast about it, and you start meeting these individuals who live that life. You're going, oh my freaking hell, I had no clue.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like you meet somebody and you have this instant kind of, I don't call it judgment. It's kind of like you kind of build this instant story about somebody, right? You meet somebody for the first time, maybe you have a few minute conversation, like at the networking events we used to go to, and you meet somebody and, um, I remember the first time I ever met you, and we had this conversation, and, that perception I had of you after we sat down and got to know each other a little bit was completely different. It's like, wow, this guy's been through some stuff. He's been through a lot, and he's doing some great things by doing this podcast and making a difference. And so, you know, yeah, it's like we have to be very careful about. You just don't know anybody's story until you get to know them. And I think we're in this. It's always been there in society, but it's right now. It's just that, like you said, it's this heightened state right now where we're just instant judgment, social media, everything that goes on, and oh, this person, they voice an opinion. Well, they're obviously this and this and this. Well, you don't know. We don't have the, yeah, compassion is about listening and understanding people, and that's something I talk about in the book with my grandma's. I lost that a little bit because I didn't take the time. It's like I saw the stuff going on with her, and it really became this thing about fear. It was really, I became fearful of what was going on because I didn't understand it. I didn't really get, why was she changing like this? Why is she lashing out, at me and doing these things that had never happened before? Um, and so we created this distance, and I created this distance between us instead of what knowing now what I could have. But again, you're a teenager, you don't really have the insight to do this. But it's like if I'd have just gone into her room one day and just sat down and said, "Hey, Grandma, what can I do? What can I do to help you? How can I help this situation?" Instead of just creating more distance, and that's kind of where the compassion fell away. I lost that compassion for her and trying to understand what she was going through, and I think it's something that we have to pay very much attention to nowadays with our own families. And hey, try to understand what they're going through. Sit down and engage with them. Stay engaged in their life. That's a big kind of focal point of my book as well. You got to stay engaged in people's lives. Once you disengage, you can't do anything. But if you can stay engaged, then that's where you can provide that compassion and that help.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, you get a better understanding of things. I mean, I love how where you're going with this, because being in the single world now, at my age, I'm not liking it, in all honesty, right now, right?
Right.
It's so different than it was 18 years ago,
Oh yeah, yeah.
and it's funny because I'm noticing, and I'm not, please don't get me wrong, especially to our listeners, please don't get me wrong. This is not all women, okay?
Yeah.
I've just noticed that they are so quick of deciding who you are as an individual in such a short
mm,
period of time,
right,
basing things off of what you say,
right.
and I can see certain actions or whatever maybe throwing up some flags, and even some things that you do say. However, it's again, it's we're so quick to toss in the towel, or we're so quick to put that label on an individual
Yeah.
before we actually get a chance to really dig down deep and get to know who that person is.
Hmm.
And a lot of people will open up and share. And
Yeah.
I think this is so so huge of you, Sean, to write this book and come out, because it's showing your vulnerability, right? You're going, hey, this is how I looked at life, and I made a huge mistake. And
Yeah.
I'm hoping I can help someone else not do the same thing that I did, to make this other person's life a little better.
Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely been, um, it's something I kept very close to the chest for so long. And it was pretty terrifying, honestly. It was when I was hovering over the post button on my social media to announce that I was releasing this to family and friends. And man, I had to walk away from it a couple times. I'm like, am I really doing this? I'm like sweating, and I'm like, oh man, I finally said, all right, bam, I just hit the button, and it's like, okay, it's out now. There's no going back, because
Right?
it's a personal story. It is set up as a fictional family. It's based on my experiences, and that's for privacy reasons. And, I don't use specific, names of family and things like that. So I set it up as this, I call it nonfiction fiction. It's like, it's a real story, but it's not, the family I've changed names and places and things like that
Yeah.
for privacy reasons, but it's very much based on our experiences. And um, I've also thrown in some things at the end where I had over the years. I've was very fortunate where I was able to meet and interview some experts in the field. So I've met with people who were um, counselors. I met with people who were in the elderly care profession, were advocates in the elderly care profession, and nurses as well. I used to work with some nurses, and I had these conversations, and a lot of that gets into the book as well as from a I don't consider myself a professional in the field, obviously. And so I was reaching out to professionals to get their input and their insight. And some of that insight made it into the book at the end as a say, hey, this is my story, but here's some insight from professionals on what you can possibly do if you're struggling, and some resources to go to. And they were very generous with their time. And um, but it's just been this like, yeah, even though I've kind of made it a story about this family, it's still me, and it's still my it's still my experiences. And there was a lot of questions on my part. There's a lot of like, you know how's my family going to react to this? How's my mom going to react? She knew I was doing this for a long time, but when it actually came time to put it out there, and it's like, how are people going to respond to this? Is this going to be okay? Are they going to be are they going to be not great with this and what I'm doing? And so far the response has been great. It's been very positive, from family and from others as well, who have read it and said kind of the same thing. It's like, yeah, this is. I got a page long letter from a gentleman about 2 weeks ago, who I don't know very well, but we know him through a kind of a friend of the family thing. And he wrote me this page and a half letter about personal experiences that he had, and that just resonated with him. So as scary as it was to put it out there, because it is personal. It's not writing a science fiction novel. This is a personal experience. And uh, it's been good so far to get that positive feedback and know that's okay. Yeah, it was scary, but you know people are having these experiences, and it's people can relate, and that's the goal, right?
Doggone it. I keep hitting that because someone's vacuuming close, and I don't know if you
I know.
can
I
you
was,
hear it? Can you hear
no,
the
no,
vacuum? Okay,
nope,
good,
you're
good.
good.
I'll leave it off mute then.
I had the same kind of fears because I'm like, oh, I hope stuff's not going on, but it's pretty
Yeah,
quiet
okay,
right now. So
as long as you can't hear
no,
it.
you're good.
So what was your aha moment when it came to the compassion part of things? I mean, apparently you've grown, you've gotten your adulthood. However, I know I carried a lot of things from my younger age all the way into my adulthood. And it took some time. My gosh, being vulnerable, it took me until I lost my job of 24 years
Mm,
because someone telling me I was a liar and a manipulator and going, yeah, bullshit. You're full of crap. No, I'm not. And
right.
then I started thinking about it. They were 100% correct.
Yeah. Yeah.
What was it for you?
Um, I would probably have to say it was um my mother-in-law passed away back in 2015 after about an 8-year battle with cancer. And as my kids were growing up, I look at what happened as a kind of these lessons that grandma was teaching me and still teaches me. And some of the lessons I learned, some I didn't, and some I'm still learning. And especially with my patience, compassion, when my boys were little, did I have that? Sometimes I didn't. Sometimes the lessons were learned, sometimes they weren't. When you go down this rabbit hole with a misbehaving child, right? It's like, okay, maybe you need to step back and take a breath and reflect on these lessons that you're trying to teach other people that I'm not being very good about right now. And then but I remember we went down to St. George to see my mother-in-law before she passed, and she said, "This is going to be one of those moments where I cannot make those same mistakes, right?" So it's like I made a conscious effort to go in and say, "Hey, what can I do for you right now? What can I do to help you right now? What can I do to make this a little bit better?" And then once we got past that, it was like, and I'd taken a long break from writing any of that up until that point. This thing's gone through many periods of work and then sitting in a drawer for a long time because I'm like, why am I doing this? Is anybody going to listen? Is anybody going to care about this? But I think it was that experience with my mother-in-law, and when we got back to town, and it's like we were actually living in Boise at the time. Um, I just remember driving home like, okay, that was good. I embraced some of the lessons there. My boys embraced some of the lessons there. They were super engaged and trying to help their grandma and help her through her struggle that she was having. It's okay. I need to move on. I need to continue with this. I need to not give up on this. She would not want me to give up on it. The people that have put in the time and effort to support me in this would not want me to. Otherwise, I've wasted people's time. So I think it was that period that really was kind of like, if I'm going to walk the walk, I gotta do it. If I'm going to talk the talk, it's time to get it out there and actually, you know, engage in people's lives and try to make things better if I can.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And it's a process, right? I'm sure that's what you're
Yeah.
finding out is it is a process because
Hmm.
there's so many things that I have been working on, especially the last 15 years, and there's something that comes up new quite a bit that I'm going, oh my gosh, okay, there's something else I got to work on,
Yeah.
right? And sometimes it feels overwhelming because
Yeah.
you've got
Yeah.
this, you've
Absolutely.
got first it's one or two or three things or a handful of things, and now it's like I got 3 pages of things that I need to work on becoming better. The
Yeah.
only thing I could do is just take one at a time
Yeah.
and just keep working on it
Yeah.
to make a change.
Yeah. And that's a great point because it can be very overwhelming. And it's interesting because now I started this process when my sons were very little, and now they're basically adults themselves, and so um, trying to help them through some of these issues and kind of teach them some of the lessons that I've learned. And um, I had this conversation not too long ago with my older son. He's like, some days you just got to pick your battles. Some days you just got to focus on one thing that you can get better at. Focus on one thing that you can do to help yourself not be so mentally, I think the society right now, it's just where we're at. It's like it's instant gratification, it's frustration. If they don't get it, it's, they they stress out about things. And it's like, okay, find something that's upsetting you, that's causing your mental health to take a downward turn. Focus on that, step back, breathe, let yourself realize that it's not as huge of as a deal as you think it is right now. And so it's really interesting right now to try and pass this knowledge on to the next generation, my own kids. But it's it really makes me think too. It's like, okay, if I'm trying to teach this, am I doing this well right now? Maybe I'm not so much, and so it's like this whole kind of trying to teach my boys, but also, well, if I'm trying to teach them this, how am I doing with it right now? Can I get better? Can I, there are places I'm still falling short, and there are, I think none of us are perfect, and it's just a constant. That's what I tell them. I said it's not something you ever really master, mindfulness and really this kind of self-evaluation is this self-awareness to it's a lifetime learning process. You're going to fail days. I fail days. Some days you're going to be great. You just have to pick yourself up when you fall because it's going to happen.
Yeah,
So
yeah, it's definitely going to happen.
yeah, so it's been very interesting to see my boys at this kind of this level, that age where I was when I started really diving into this stuff and trying to pass it on. And it really makes you think, am I doing it right? Am I not doing it right? So some days I feel like I am, and some days I feel like I'm not. So
Yeah. It's some actually the recovery community has helped me out quite a bit.
mhm,
They say in a serenity prayer about being able to handle the things that you can't control and the things that you can, right?
right.
And something that has really, really helped me, especially at the beginning of this year, because around the end of last year, I really started digging deep in my soul and going, okay, I have got to figure some stuff out, right? This has been going on too long. I'm tired of feeling this way, tired of
Mhm,
thinking this way. And not being really a religious person, more spiritual than religion.
right.
I just basically just my higher power for me is God. I'm just like, just take my life. And I
Yeah.
don't mean take my life to go back to him. I'm just saying
Right.
take control of my life because I go back and I'm really starting to think of where my life has gone and the choices that I've made and some of the bad choices that I've made. And I would say the majority of the bad choices I made was me trying to control what Al wanted.
Yeah. Yeah.
Instead of just letting things flow and just go, you know what, this is out of my control. There's nothing I can do about it. And I I'm around certain individuals that it's it's complain every day. Every day.
Right.
It's the
Yeah.
government, it's the cost of food, it's this, it's that, it's this, it's I mean, just on and on and on and on and on. And it's like you have no control over that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Don't you just want to be happy and just kind of and there's certain things that you can control, right? So like if you got a low tire and your car's telling you you got a low tire, you need to stop and put some
Yep.
air in it. Now if you don't and you end up getting on the freeway and getting a flat and now you're out there trying to change a tire with people going past you 80 miles an hour, okay, that's one thing. But there are other things that you have no control over, and I think it's best just to let it be. And I tell you what, it's a process I am still
Yeah. Oh yeah.
working on because I have been programmed this other way all my life,
Yep.
and now I've got to reprogram it.
Yep. Yeah. Surrender is an extremely difficult thing.
Yes.
That's very challenging, and that's in my professional life, I've been a director. I've been in operations management and things where you're expected to control everything, and that's the day-to-day expectation. You got to control this. You got to make sure we're hitting our goals and we're hitting our numbers, and everybody's happy in the building and everything, and go home every day just exhausted from trying to control everybody and everything. but that was the expectation, or at least I thought it was at the time. You know, what I've learned is that it doesn't have to be that way. It doesn't have to be, yes, you do what you do the best you can. You know, it's great to have goals and great to have things that you want to accomplish, and you do the best that you can at those. But when the day is done and you're sitting back, accepting the fact that, okay, there's just certain things that I can't control. There's certain people that I can't control no matter what I do. Um, and to accept that is a whole different level of freedom, but it's hard to do because we're taught to control, right? We're taught, especially, you know, like for you and I, and you know, our generation coming up, there was a certain mentality about, you know, you need to be in control. You need to be you need to be the driver. You need to be the, you know, the breadwinner, and you know, you got to do this right. And you know, nothing wrong with that per se, but um, I think a lot of mental health issues come out of this wanting to control everything. And if you can just get to the point to where, no, I can't control people. I can't control what they're going to think about me. I can't control what they're going to do from day to day. I can provide guidance. I can provide leadership as their leader. But ultimately, there's, you know, people are going to be who they are, and I can't control that. And you know, you can get rid of so much stress and grief if you surrender to that. But that's what I tell my boys is I know I'm saying these things, but it's easier said than done sometimes, but it opens up a whole different world if you can do it, you know?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, opening up a whole different world. That's spot on, Sean. I mean, seriously, because it does. It
Yeah,
really does. When you can just kind of let things go to the wayside and go, it's going to work out the way it works out.
yeah,
And it's amazing how it ends up working out. A lot of
yeah,
times for the better, and other times you're actually going in a tunnel that's even darker than what you went into.
yep,
However, it's kind of like the light in your title, right? Instead of it
mhm.
shattering, all of a sudden now there is a brighter light.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. It's, you know, when my boys were younger, I can remember literally, Al, some specific days that if I could go back to and do over again, I would, like that, because, you know, I was a manager. I was running a school at the time, and it was very stressful. And you know, I was trying to control. It's kind of this illusion of control during the day, but you're grasping on it. You're trying to get control of things, but deep down, I knew I couldn't control things, and things were just stressful. And so, you know, just felt out of control for me. And so I'd get home and I'd pull into the garage and I'd take a deep breath and say, okay, I'm home now. I'm gonna just try to let it go. I walk in. Okay, maybe there's something blowing up in the house, you know, at home. The kids are, you know, freaking out about something. There's something. The reaction was to swing to the other side. Well, here's a place I can control. I can control this kid right now because that's what I can control. I can control attitudes. And the problem is it would spiral out of control, right? Because, you know, all of a sudden I'm angry and I'm trying to control this kid and I'm losing my patience over something because of something that went on at work. You know, even though you try to set it aside, but you get home and, okay, I can control this situation, but then you let the kind of the stress of the day back in, and all of a sudden you're yelling at a kid, you know, for some stupid thing, you know, and those are the lessons that continue to try to learn is, you know, it's, if you can put those things aside, take a deep breath and um, not let those little things in, and steal the joy out of your day and out of this time you're supposed to be spending with your family. And I can think back on times where I failed at that miserably. You know, it's like, dang, if I could go back to that day, I would do it in a second. You know, but you know, you can't. So all you do is, you know, you can't fix what happened then. All you can fix is moving forward, you know, and then try to be better tomorrow. You know, and that's all you can do. It's a challenge every day.
Oh yeah. Well, and it's the lessons learned behind it, right? Because
Yeah.
there's definitely some times as well. If I could go back, I'd change some stuff, and then I have to stop and go back and say, okay, you know what? I learned a lesson from this. It took me a while to
Yeah.
figure, a long while, I mean, we're talking years,
Yeah.
not
Oh
just a
yeah.
month or so, right?
Yep.
Because you and I now both, we're sitting here on this show and we're talking about it and we're looking way back in the past.
Hmm.
That's our lesson. And it took us this amount of time with everything else that's happened in our life to start opening up and going, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
how wrong was I?
Yep.
I definitely could have done this better because life as you know it, it's gonna present that same thing to us again over and over. And it's
Yeah.
gonna test us to see how well that we handle things. And
Yeah.
I mean, a buddy of mine, we had coffee this morning and we were talking about that, about life and the lessons behind things. And you finally get to a point in your life, I think. And I wish I could say it's probably a huge percent of it. However, I think there are still people that are so still stuck. They got their foot between the rocks and they just don't know how
Yeah.
to. If they just took their shoe off, they could pull their foot out, right? But they
Right. Yeah.
won't take their shoe
Right.
off
Uh-huh.
for us to start realizing. But we get to that point where we finally start going, there is so much more to life.
Yeah.
And luckily we're figuring it out now and not when we're 80.
Yeah,
You
exactly.
know?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. And that was another thing that really pushed me probably last year, early last year, when I had this manuscript where I was ready to do something with it. I didn't know exactly what. Like, what am I going to do? How am I going to get this done? I got to find somebody to do cover design. I got to find somebody to kind of help me with this, and didn't really know how to go about it. So I just started doing the research, and that what you said is a key point. It's like I can't let any more time go by. Like I've been sitting on this for way too long, right? I've been tinkering with it, messing with it. It's not going to help anybody sitting in a drawer. If I just let it sit in a drawer, then like I mentioned before, I've had professionals that have met with me and sat and had lunch with me, and like I've wasted their time. I've wasted how many years of my own time and effort. I can't do that. Like, and that was really probably early last year. That really, it's like, hey, if I'm going to do, so I said, okay, I'm gonna have this done. I'm gonna have the cover design. I'm gonna have everything ready to go by the end of last year. That was the goal I set. I said, okay, make it happen. If you don't have, and I kind of went hardcore about it. I was like, if you don't have it done by the end of the year, it's over. You're not doing it. Forget about it. And just so I had to put, but I felt like I had to put that pressure on myself, or I was just gonna let the fear control me again. I said, don't put it out there. It's too personal. It's too this, it's too that. Is anybody really going to care? All these fears that you have doing something like this. And, um, I just said, I can't, I can't let this go on anymore. I can't disappoint myself. I can't disappoint people that know I'm working on this project. And I want to be able to do this while, and we're still young, Al. Let's not kid ourselves. We're still young,
Yeah,
so
absolutely. You betcha.
so I want to be able to do this when I can go out and still engage with people and try to make a difference that way. And but I couldn't let any more time go by.
Yeah. Well, and that's because that's something we don't get back,
Yeah,
right? I
exactly.
mean, we do not, and I tip my hat off to my daughter and her husband. We have the three grandkids, and I mean, these guys, their schedule is just like bam, 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 bam,
Right.
constantly. They love it though. They enjoy it
Yeah.
because they know there's coming a time soon those kids are not going to be there and they're going to go, my gosh, where did it go? Instead of
Oh
us
yeah.
enjoying it,
Yeah.
we've been complaining about it, but they don't complain. They enjoy every single moment of it.
Yeah. That's great.
It's so
That's
cool to see that.
Yeah. That's great that they have that kind of acknowledgement, because it's really easy to get wrapped up in that life. And you get wrapped up in the next thing. You get wrapped up in the next soccer practice, the next dance recital, the next whatever. You're just going from one task to the next and checking off your boxes and just trying to get through the week. And pretty soon you turn around, your kids are in high school.
Oh
And
yeah.
I have to remind myself too, a lot of times it's like, you know, the times I spent with my grandmother are way more good times than the bad. And then same with my kids. Like I had way more great times with my kids, way more, even though I think it's just easy for us to sometimes dwell on the negative, like, oh, dwell on, oh, I should have done that better. I could have been better at that. That's part of the acceptance and surrender process. It's like just kind of let that go. Yeah, I had some days that I'd love to go back to because I just wasn't fully present with my kids. I was too involved in my work, and um, so I have to remind myself that wasn't every day. That was, most days were great days, but we key in on those negatives. I think that's just kind of our human nature, right? We key on what went wrong instead of what went right. And so, if your daughter and husband have that awareness right now, then kudos to them, because it's so easy to get caught up in everyday life.
Yeah. Yep, absolutely. Do you have a favorite chapter in your book that you just went through it and went, "Oh my gosh, this one just really resonates with me."
Um, yeah, probably the one that it's probably also the toughest chapter.
Okay.
Um, and so every time I did a rewrite and I was going back and doing editing, or doing another revision or whatever, I would always get to this chapter, and I would have to stop, and say, okay, I don't know if I've got the mental capacity to handle this tonight. Maybe I'll come back to it tomorrow, because as a one we had this moment in time where grandma's depression really kind of took this really really terrible turn. Like she almost overdosed one night on aspirin, and I don't think she really knew what she was doing. I think she was just, we don't really know it to this day. Was it something deliberate, or was it something? And um, I was getting up early one morning to go to a job interview, and I kind of met her, and she was in the bathroom. I was trying to get her out of the bathroom so I could get in, because we shared a bathroom, and she was in the bathroom, and I could hear something going on. I didn't understand what the noise was at the time, but when I walked into the bathroom and she came out, I could see something was wrong. And she looked like a kid, and I describe it this way in the book: a kid with a mouthful of bubble gum. And she came walking by me and kind of hurried into her room, muttered something about not feeling well. She had a cheek full of aspirin, and I kind of just zoned out. Like, it was so crazy at the time, I just kind of tuned it right out. Oh, I got to get ready for this job interview. So I jump in, I go to my job interview. Uh, I get back to the house, and it was a disaster. I couldn't focus. Something was wrong at the house with grandma. And I knew that, and I couldn't focus on anything. So I come back home. There's an ambulance parked in our driveway, and they're wheeling grandma out to the ambulance as I'm pulling in. And um, that was the moment that really was like, we've got a problem here that we have to figure out some way or another. This is, and then it's another one of those moments, like, I just kept going about my day. Something was dreadfully wrong, and I just kept going about through my day. Why didn't I stop and deal with that situation right then and there? Why didn't I? What is going on, Grandma? What's happening? What? She could have died that day. And I, like, something clicked in my head that just kind of, like, couldn't grasp what was happening. I couldn't process it. So I just kept continuing on about my morning, and came back, and she took off, and she left in an ambulance. And so it's one of those really moments where it's like, this is a problem. This was, and that chapter was really kind of where I started the book years ago. That was that moment that really kind of made me want to process and write some things down initially. And so it's always my favorite, is an interesting word. I think it's the toughest chapter for me personally, but it was also kind of the most kind of shook me to the core, and our family as well. My mom was a mess. My mom was in a bad way afterwards, and we just couldn't understand how it was, and it was so different. This was the '80s, and we didn't have the blogs and the podcasts like this, and we really didn't know what to do other than send her back to the hospital for more,
Yeah.
for more drugs and more whatever. And so that's the chapter I always go back to. That was really kind of the one that kept me going. It's like, hey, she needs help, and this is where it really kind of became the focal point for me, as far as how I could have reacted in a some in a better way. I could have done something more that morning to help her and didn't, and so it was, it's a tough one, but it's always one that kind of gripped me the most, I guess, I could say.
Yeah. Because I can hear like the resentment, I guess, in your voice a little bit, right? Of beating yourself up,
Yeah.
for not listening and not paying attention to the way the thoughts were
Yeah.
going. I guess not resentment. It's not resentment is the right word, but yeah, that just yeah, feeling like you failed your grandma,
Hmm.
right, for not and I think we've all done that.
Yeah.
It takes us some time to start realizing that really life isn't all about us, right? And we
Yeah.
do, we
Yeah.
get, and I'm not saying just us, it's just our life in general. We get so focused on where we're going to go. And I lost a lot of time with my daughters, when I was working at a manufacturing plant, because my goal was to work my way up the corporate ladder. And that's
Hmm.
exactly what I did. And I
Right.
missed, I missed, all types of events. Are you going to be there? No, dad has to work.
Uh,
You
yeah.
know,
Yep. Yep.
well, I finally got to the point where when I went to Kentucky and then came back here, I told him, I'm like, if my kids have something going on, I'm leaving. I'm going.
Yeah.
I'll be back afterwards, but I'm going because I missed too much of that already.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. You don't get those moments back, and that's,
Yeah.
I was literally face to face with my grandma, and I could see something was wrong. I kept hearing this sound all morning, and I talked about this in the book. Couldn't figure out what it was. It sounded like a rattle. It sounded like a, a child's toy. It was aspirin in a bottle, right? It was these aspirin shaking. I couldn't figure that out until I walked in and saw the bottle on the counter, and I was literally face to face with her. And it's like it's like I was right there. All I had to do was reach out and literally maybe grab her and hold on to her and say, "What's the problem? What's going on?" I just kept walking, and
Yeah.
that's something that really kind of drove me to finish this. So
Wow. Well, good for you for wanting to write this book. You said at the beginning of the show, and even when you and I spoke on the phone, one of the things that you said is if this book can help just one person, then I did exactly what I needed to do. And down a
yeah,
long run, we end up not realizing how many people it will help, right? Because
yeah,
Sean, if one person reads this book, which they already have, and it affects them in a different way, they're going to share that,
yeah,
and it's going to touch someone else, and then they're going to share it, and it's going to touch someone else. So the domino effect goes so far that you will probably never ever see it, of how
yeah, yeah. It
how
could
many
be.
people you have literally touched. And it is just by that one, just that one, that can make that difference.
Yeah, and that's what kept me going. Honestly, I was just that thought and some positive feedback I got very early on in the process. I took a copy of the manuscript, which is very out of character for me. I went to this. There was a local writer here before we moved off to the Midwest years ago. We were here in West Jordan, and there was a back when the West Jordan Library was over there off of what 70th, right?
Yeah.
70th or 72nd.
78, 78.
Yeah, 78th. And
Yeah.
it's local. She's a writer, but she'd been a national published writer, but she was doing more local stuff at the time. And she's just giving this talk. And my wife handed me the West Jordan newspaper. I got home from playing golf one day. She said, "Hey, this writer's doing this thing at the library. You should go check her out." I was like, I don't know. So I looked at it. I said, okay. So I jumped in the shower, grabbed my binder with my manuscript in it. I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm just going to take it. And I approached her afterwards because she was taking questions and people were talking to her after. And I thought, I did one of those things where I'm sitting there in the back of the room, like sweating. I'm like, no, I'm not going up there. Yes, you're going up there. No, I'm not going up. Yes, you're going up. You know. So finally, I let the crowd thin out, and I go walking up to her and I said, "Hey, I know you're busy, but if you could just take a look, um, and just give me some feedback, I would appreciate it." And she says, "Well, you know what? I've got my son's getting married in a couple of weeks. Um, but call me." She gave me her number and she call me in a couple of weeks. and we'll see what we can do. And so, all right, I took her number and I think, well, okay, I'll give it a couple of weeks. I'll call her back and she'll be like, I'm busy with my son's wedding. I haven't got, don't. I did another one thing because I'm like hovering over the phone, right? Again, like my social media before. I was like, am I pressing the dial button? Yeah. So I finally press it and I call her and I talk to her. She says, yeah, bring your manuscript over. Turns out she just lived a few minutes from me out in West Jordan. We were living at Brittany townhomes at the time out there. And she just lived a few minutes away. And so I drove it over, I dropped it. I said, she said, yeah, give me a couple weeks. Let me get through some stuff and I'll take a look at it. Okay. So a couple more weeks go by. She, I call her again. I'm thinking she's going to tell me she's busy. She hasn't touched it yet. She says, no, I've read through it. I've got some stuff for you. Come on over. Oh, okay. So I go running over there and she's giving me all this good constructive feedback and and she wrote out this page long thing that very encouraging words. And I mean, that was years and years ago. And, somebody who didn't have to, and she's also getting ready to go on an adult mission with her husband to Australia. And so, I mean, there's no way she's going to do this for me. Right. But she did. And she gives me all this feedback and I have that paper. To this day, I've got it in my files because I would go back to that and say, okay, because she said something similar, say, keep going with this because it's going to help somebody someday. And so I kept that paper for you, and I still have it, and I go back to it all the time. It's one of the things that really kind of kept me going, and just that idea of it. I saw a quote one time. I think it was just a something that popped up on Instagram. So I was, right. I wrote this. It's like something to the effect of, it may not be famous, it may not be, uh, world renowned or something to that effect, but that's not why I started and that's not why I'm going to finish, and I kind of took that to heart as well. It's like, if I can reach a few people, then I've done what I set out to do.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and it sounds like you're already heading that direction. It sounds like you've already touched some lives, and to have somebody like her actually say that to you,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, that's amazing.
It really was amazing. And, I hope to find her. Her name is Carol Warburton. She's a local, and I hope I'm trying to track down her family, just because I want to be able to hand walk a book to her,
Yeah.
and um, yeah, it just takes one person to. Of course, I had encouragement from family and stuff, but when you have it from somebody who's a professional in the field to say, hey, this is good. You need to keep going. And then to actually take the time, because I've been turned down in years since. Like I've approached other people and gotten that treatment, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll see what I can do, kind of thing. Where she actually took the time, and she was busy. She was in between a wedding and getting ready to go on a mission, and she took that time. And it's that one person that can, and that was so many years ago, and I kept that with me. And so, if I can do that for somebody, then that's what I want to do.
Yeah. Well, and that's all it takes is one person, and it makes us feel pretty doggone good inside
Yep.
when someone says that, about your book or your show or whatever it
Hmm.
might be, because that tells you, what, God's got me on the right path, and I'm touching someone,
Yeah.
and it can go so much further. And yeah, and who knows, gosh, one person, like you said, one person can pick up your book, and one day maybe we see Schon on Oprah or something like that. I don't know. Does Oprah even still have a show anymore? I don't even know.
I don't know, but
Yeah.
yeah, that would be great. That would be great. But right now it's just kind of one day at a time. I'm just kind of feeling it out there and just trying to see what avenues are out there. And that's why I'm so grateful for you, Al. You are one of those people. I think we met for a reason. Because for me to be here today it's a privilege, and I appreciate it. And um, it's people like you that are helping make that difference as well.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, that's what's so cool about having this show, and letting people, that come on when they're like, well, which direction do you want to go? And I'm like, I don't know. It's your show, not mine. You tell me,
We don't have
and
talking points.
yeah,
What?
yeah, no talking points. This beautiful lady that I interviewed this morning, Lindsay, we've been friends for a while. I met her through some other mutual friends, and she's the first one that I've interviewed at a 200, and you're the 69th show, who
Ah,
went to recovery, but didn't have a problem with addiction.
oh, really?
Yeah, she
Interesting.
was struggling with life with some things, and her family members, she had some very loving family members, brother who kind of works in the industry, and um, mom and dad very supportive, and they says, look, we can tell that you're struggling, and it was just bad relationship, and life had just kind of taken her down a dark hole. And yeah, she ended up going to recovery with no addiction
Well,
issues,
it's
except for being miserable.
that's an addiction.
Yeah.
We get addicted to our misery. We get addicted to our story. This kind of story we've built about ourselves, right? And it's all usually fake. And we get addicted to our fears and our shortcomings. And so, yeah, I can totally see that. I mean, it's I'm not an expert in that area by any means, but from what I've heard and from other people have talked about the recovery movements, it's a lot of just life lessons, right? I mean, it's
Yeah.
just learning how to navigate life, and that's yeah. If we can figure that out, then we're all going to be much better shape. And it's like we said earlier on, I think it's much needed right now.
Yeah. I really do think there's a shift happening. My buddy and I was talking about that this morning. And we used to work together, and we'd get in some pretty serious conversations, and
Hmm.
in depth, like spiritual in depth, and just life itself.
Yeah.
And and I said, brother, I says, I really am sensing that there's a shift happening. And he goes, so am I. He's starting to feel that individuals like yourself and him and so many others I that I love to be around, they're all starting to notice something's changing.
Yeah.
Now there's a lot of negativity, and we talked about it earlier in the show, all the bull crap that's going out there, which I do my best not to pay attention to, because I want to be happy.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't want to listen to all this negative crap that,
Right. Right.
the world's going to explode, and this
Yeah.
is the end of man as we know it.
The fear mongering. Yep.
Yeah, yeah. I just want to be happy, and it's crazy because there are quite a few of us, at least the people that I associate with, that they're feeling it too. There's a change coming, and
Yeah.
we're there are quite a few of us that are understanding compassion, and there are a lot of us that are understanding we need to start giving out more love, and we
Hmm.
got to stop all the judgment.
Right.
And I mean, gosh,
Yeah, I mean, people
this
are getting to
world
a
would be
tipping.
so
Yeah,
much
it's
better.
like a tipping point. People are just like, I can either continue to live miserably like this, or I can do something about it. I just think we're seeing more and more people starting to make that change into, I need to do something about this, right?
Yeah, yeah, yep, amen. Is there anything else that you would like to share? Because I mean, gosh, we're on in an hour already. The hour goes by so freaking
Yeah, yeah.
fast. It's amazing. Seems like it's a half hour, and then you look
I
at the
know.
clock. Most of the time, it's after an hour. And like,
Yeah,
geez,
right. Yeah. No,
yeah.
it's yeah, it's out on Amazon right now, so you
Okay.
can. We got it's that's what it looks like right there. So I don't know if you can see that. I'm on my blur settings, so it doesn't look very
Yeah,
good,
kind of.
but
So keep it in front of your shirt. Keep it in front of your shirt. You was able to see. There you go. Now
there we
you
go.
can see it. Okay.
So, yeah, When Light Shatters. So, a story about lessons learned from grandma's depression and healing life through compassion, connection, and forgiveness. That's the goal of it. So on Amazon now. I'm looking at some other platforms. I'm looking at maybe Barnes and Noble online soon, and some others, but available on Amazon now. And yeah, I'd love for people to give me feedback on it and reach out to me. And if they've got stories to tell, I'd love to hear them. So,
Okay. I love it. Now, I believe you can actually figure out. I think there's a way that you can hook up with Barnes and Noble and have a book signing.
yeah, yeah, that's in the works. I'm looking at all those
Okay.
possibilities. Yeah. So if that comes to fruition, which I'm going to make it happen at some point, yeah, you'll be one of the first to know.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, I want my
Yeah,
signed copy, man.
absolutely. I'll send you one.
I have so many books to read. I have
Oh, I
had
bet.
Bless send me so many of their books, which I'm so grateful for. And there's some good ones. There's some
Yeah,
really, really good ones.
yeah.
And yeah, I've got enough reading material. And me being the slow reader that I am, I've got enough reading material to last me probably for at least the next 5 years.
I'm, I bet you do. Yeah. Well, something else for people to know is it's not a long read either. I did that by design. I look back on some earlier manuscripts that were very long and had just a lot of kind of meandering, and I really shaved it down to where it can be read over 2 or 3 sittings, and it's um, like I said, it's kind of a fictional family, not even set here. And it's not a regionalized book. It's not even set in Salt Lake City. It's not a book that points to one religion or another, or, spiritual path or another. It's just a story about this family that struggled with this problem they had, and some things that people can do to maybe work through those problems that they're having. And it's fairly easy read. I think. It's not somewhere you got to spend 2 months going through it. It's a pretty simple message. At the end of the day, it's just ultimately it's about staying engaged with your loved ones and staying engaged with their life, and not giving up on their life. Stay with them. You know, be present. Be
Yeah.
present and be engaged.
Yeah. Yeah, because we all need that,
Yeah,
every single one of us. And sometimes it is hard, especially those who have loved ones that are battling addiction. We got to learn how to set our boundaries to help protect
yeah,
us as well. And
yep, absolutely,
however, it's still you can still have that compassion and you can still stay engaged in certain ways.
absolutely, 100%. So
Yeah. Well, Sean, again, man, thank you so much for your time. And thank you seriously for reaching out to me and going, hey, Al, I got this book. Would there be an opportunity to come on the show? And uh, absolutely,
yeah,
because anything we can do to help others, I think that's part of our mission
yeah,
here for all of
absolutely.
us.
Well, thank you, Al. I appreciate it. I appreciate your willingness to bring me on. I've certainly appreciated your friendship in the past. We've known each other for a few years now,
Yeah,
and I'm privileged to call you a friend. And I appreciate you bringing me on and taking some time with me. So
absolutely. And the same goes with me, man. I'm so blessed to have you in my life, and you and I've had some pretty good conversations,
yeah,
which I'm always grateful for. So yeah,
absolutely.
thank you so much.
Yeah, don't won't be a stranger for sure. Like I said, I'll keep you informed on any further happenings. So
Okay, sounds like a plan. Well, guys,
okay,
again, thank you to everyone. Thank you to all our listeners, past guests, our future guests, and thank you guys for making all this a reality. So blessed to have you guys. You guys are the ones that are making this this show successful. Um, all our listeners, guys, thank you. And I threw this out on our last show, and I'm going to be throwing this out a little bit more. I've been keeping a little bit of a secret since the beginning of the year. I have been actually going through some training and actually just took my last class a week ago and passed the test last Friday. I am now considered an international certified crisis and recovery coach. So if you guys know anyone who's
awesome,
suffering from any kind of crisis or trauma, recovery, I'm offering some really, really good deals right now just because I need the practice. I need practice, lots of practice, so I can really get good at what I have learned. So very, very, very cheap, very cheap. At least for right now until I can own these skills. So if you guys know anybody, please reach out to me on Facebook on Messenger, or you can email me at mralrichards@gmail.com. Again, guys, thank you for all your love, all your support, and all your kindness. And remember this: addiction is giving up everything for one thing, and recovery is giving up one thing for everything. We're out.